Show me the money! Show me the money! Show me the money! Congratulations, you're still my agent.
You hear about CEO pay in America all the time, right? It's constantly making headlines. But what do the numbers really mean? Well, today we're going to get past the noise and break down the reality of the CEO pay gap. Okay, so here's the number at the very heart of our explainer today, 268 to 1. It's a really stark, simple ratio. But what does it actually represent? Let's put some context around it. So here's what that number really means. For every single dollar the median worker at a top S&P 500 company earns, and remember, that's one of the 500 biggest public companies in the US, their CEO takes home $268. Just let that sink in for a second. But believe it or not, the scale of this gap gets even more staggering when you look at it over time. To put it another way, just imagine working a full year, right? From January 1st all the way to December 31st. Well, the average top CEO earns what you make in that entire year by the end of their first work day. So this really raises a huge question. Has it always been this wide? To really get it, we've got to look back. I mean, a massive gap like this doesn't just appear overnight. Let's rewind the clock and see how this whole thing has evolved. So back in 1965, things looked a lot different. The ratio was a much more modest 20 to 1. By 1989, it had almost tripled to 59 to 1. And from there, it has absolutely skyrocketed to the 268 to 1 figure we see today. So what on earth is driving this incredible growth? Well, it turns out there isn't just one simple answer. Our source material points to 4 key drivers that all work together to create this massive pay discrepancy. Let's break them down one by one. The single biggest driver, by far, is the huge shift to stock-based pay. You see, for most top executives, over 75% of their compensation isn't even a traditional salary. Nope, it's stock grants and options. This ties their personal fortune directly to how the company's stock is doing, which kind of creates a disconnect from the wage growth of their actual employees. Next up is this really fascinating psychological driver. It's called the Lake Wobegon effect, named after a fictional town where all the kids are above average. Well, corporate boards basically do the same thing. They look at what other companies are paying their CEOs and decide, hey, we need to pay our CEO above average to get the best talent. And what's the result? The so-called average just keeps getting pushed higher and higher for everybody. It's a feedback loop. The third thing is the industry itself. The pay gap isn't the same across the board. In sectors like retail and leisure, industries with a ton of hourly and part-time workers, the ratios can get absolutely extreme. We're talking sometimes exceeding 1,000 to 1. And finally, globalization plays a really big role here. That median worker we keep talking about, they aren't necessarily based in the US. When a company has a big global workforce in countries with lower wages, it actually pulls down the median pay figure. And that, in turn, makes the CEO's compensation look even larger by comparison. Okay, so we've talked about the ratios, we've talked about the drivers. Now let's just look at the raw numbers, the dollar signs. Here are some of the top CEO compensation packages from recent years. Get ready. Leading the pack, we have Patrick Smith of Axon Enterprise with a compensation package valued at over $164 million. Then there's Brian Niccol of Starbucks with a package worth nearly $96 million. Over at General Electric, Lawrence Culp's compensation is valued at almost $89 million. At the investment firm Blackstone, Steven Schwartzman received a package worth $84 million. And at Microsoft, Satya Nadella's compensation package totals over $79 million. Seeing these massive figures kind of begs the question, why does any of this actually matter? Right. This isn't just some abstract debate about fairness. It has real, tangible consequences for companies, for workers, and for the economy as a whole. The source material points to 3 major areas where we see an impact. First off, there's the impact on employee morale. A huge pay gap can lead to feelings of unfairness and demotivation, which, can end up hurting productivity. Second, it brings legislative scrutiny. For instance, the Dodd-Frank Act, that major financial reform law, now requires companies to disclose their CEO to worker pay ratio. And third, it raises some really critical questions about how a company is choosing to spend its money. This quote from the source material really captures the core of that debate. Critics argue that the billions spent on executive compensation could instead be used for worker training, higher base wages, or R&D. So it all comes down to a fundamental debate about corporate priorities. So, after digging into the history, the key drivers, and the real world consequences, we're left with this really complex, ongoing debate about what we, as an economy, truly value. Ultimately, that 268 to 1 ratio isn't just a statistic. It kind of forces us all to ask a much bigger question. How do we measure the value of a leader's vision versus the collective effort of the thousands of people who actually bring that vision to life? It's definitely something to think about.